Hi, I'm sorry. I'm reading all the new messages on YouTube. It's Kathleen. Welcome to the students only live stream with at Kathleen Elise. So today we're going to talk about what it means to think in English. Right now, I'm going to take my glasses off because the glare drives me crazy. So I'm thinking it drives you crazy too. Um, what does it mean to think in English? We are constantly told as language learners that we need to think in English, but nobody ever really says what that means. And as I've been helping my own students this past week and um, actually for the past month or so, the young I think I've mentioned this before. I have a younger class that I keep. I have my certifications in teaching business and teaching young learners and working on other certifications as well. So I do like to keep the young ones in the rotation because I learn so much from them, not only as a teacher but also from their viewpoint as students. I'm a language learner myself, but seeing their input in struggling with my native language is super helpful as a teacher. So, at any rate, um, what I've been noticing is so they're at the point now where they're transitioning from the lower grades. They're now 10 and 11 and 12. And so they're transitioning to a point where they now need to start really thinking about how they're communicating in English. And the classes I run with them are mostly conversational classes. So, and they're taking English in school. But what I'm realizing is that their particular school system doesn't allow them any opportunity to talk and use the language. So they don't really know how to think in the language. So when I say to them, okay, you're using your Spanish, but you're using that's how you would put it, you would put your sentences together in Spanish, or that's how you would say a particular thing in Spanish, for example, instead of saying I am 10 years old, as you would say it in English, they say, I have 10 years. But if you say that in English, it's not correct and people will kind of understand you, but you'll never be able to move on in your fluency and you'll never be treated as if you're smart and as if you understand the language. So I'm trying to really help them. And so I had mentioned to them, you need to think in English. And I saw looks on their faces. So I thought, you know what? I think I need to break this down. So what thinking in English is now I have to put my glasses on so I get the order right. Um, Thinking in English is composed of three separate parts. And I'm sorry, the lighting is, let me help that. Um, so there's three separate parts to the ultimate act of thinking in English. So the first thing you need is you definitely need the understanding, not just the um, not just the acquisition of the information, but you need to know how to use the information, and you need to understand the stuff you're putting in your head in regards to I like the way I phrased it in my notes, so I'm going to read it. So knowing and understanding the words and word grouping rules of the language. So basically you need your vocabulary and your grammar. That makes perfect sense because people in one part of the world have different words for the same thing. So this is cup in English, but it's Tasse in German. I don't know my Korean yet, and I've forgotten what it is in French, but it's a different word, but it all means the same thing. Um, so you need to know what words are to say to be able to communicate what you're talking about. So the words and the grammar are important, and that is where most people stop. And This is why when you're told to think in English, it gets difficult for people and it gets confusing. And you think, but I'm learning all these words. I know these words. Isn't that thinking in English? I'm saying the words in English. There's more to it. So you not only have to understand what the word is and what it means and how to use it with other words, but you have to know the sounds. You have to be able to correctly form the sounds that make up the word, that make up the sentence. And not only the sounds of the word, so the letter A makes a few sounds, but we would say as in apple, apple, or as in altar, or some of the other words, the short A, the long A. Sometimes you say the sound says the letter's name. So sometimes it's A, as in ace. I aced the test, or I'm holding an ace for a card. Um, so you have to know the different sounds of the language. Now, here's where things can get tricky because, and this is just one area, this is just on the stuff that most people focus on. You really need to make sure and that you produce the sounds correctly, number one, and then that you produce them in the correct order, because the order, the words are put in specific order to have it all make sense. If you just jumble a bunch of words out there, it doesn't mean anything. We call that gibberish. And the same thing happens in your native language. If someone just threw a bunch of words at you, but not in any particular order, then you don't know what they're talking about. It narrows things down a lot, but you don't know. Um, and the purpose of communication is to be clear and quick, because, when people started to learn to speak, mostly it was because it was a necessity. There was danger, maybe there was an animal, a bear in the woods that was about to, eat you for dinner, and someone had to yell, look out for the bear, or, so words were placed in certain order to make the communication clear and effective. So we're looking here, when we're trying to become fluent, we're looking to be effective in our communication as well. So you definitely need the vocabulary, you definitely need the grammar. The other part of that, one of the other parts of that, the next part of that is that you have to, most often, there are specific traditions, which translates to etiquette, when you're speaking. So there's a polite way to speak. There's an impolite way to speak. There's a downright nasty way to speak. There's a different way to speak to older people, to someone in authority over you. And if you're the authority figure, then you speak a different way. There are different situations that we have certain rules, cultural rules with them. So if you're not using all of that, if you're not bringing all of that into the picture when you're speaking English to a native English speaker, then you're going to miss out on so much of the message. They're not going to understand really what you're trying to say. They might be offended. You might actually, insult someone if you don't understand the etiquette and the traditions. And again, different situations require, so say it's Thanksgiving time. Well, there's a whole language and a whole set of just Thanksgiving words and traditions and celebrations and things people do, and etc., that all revolves around Thanksgiving. But if you don't have that particular holiday in your country, then and you don't bother to learn about it when you know you're going to be speaking to a native English speaking person, well, an American speaking person, but Canadians have Thanksgiving Day, and other English speaking cultures have it as well. Excuse me. One thing you'll know about me, if you haven't seen my other videos, you will learn this about me. My curly hair does as it pleases, and sometimes I just get sidetracked by it. I apologize. Um, so there's the culture and the etiquette that you need to learn. Um, an example from my own language learning studies is I've picked up some French. I majored in German, but I've lost it all. I haven't used it in 100 years. Um, but there are, and I'm learning Korean. Korean is the most vivid example because it's so different from English, whereas French and German, there are definite differences in the cultural thinking and etiquette and all that. But um, the Korean is just so drastically different that I think it's a better example. I'm really trying to pick up the Korean, and I'm finding it very difficult for me because not only is the written language, the symbols are just nothing I've ever seen before, and so it's taking my brain time to see the symbols as I would look at my own alphabet, and put them together as words. And so I'm really struggling with that. The other thing I'm struggling with is that the concept of um, the politeness levels, and there's a definite hierarchy in the language, in the culture, the way people what you're allowed to say to certain people and what you're not allowed to say, and the cultural ramifications of that, if you get it wrong, um, can be drastic. And so, and it's a different, there's just a different philosophy, I suppose, behind the mannerisms and the traditions and this whole aspect of what the hierarchy there. So I have my vocabulary. I've been trying to do not it's not a vocabulary journal. I've been trying to write in my journal, but and keep a journal in the language. And I started this in 2023, and I should have gotten pretty far if I were able to write every day. So this was July 30th, 2023 that I wrote my first sentences in. But I was just having so much trouble that the last time I wrote in it was January 28th of this year. And it was finally I was able to write something other than hello, my name is Kathleen. So I got so excited, and then I got busy, and I've been having trouble again remembering and placing. So I got to figure that out, but I will. But at any rate, the reason I'm having trouble is that I am so used to the English grammar structure, and naturally it all makes sense to me. Whereas there's so much about the Korean structure, and so many there doesn't seem to be, from what I can tell, as much level of nuance. Um, so it's a highly contextual language where you're depending on the context of the situation and the conversation that determines what a particular word means. So there's, one word might have three drastically different meanings. I think there's one word, eep, that means it's leaf and lips and something else. So you have to really be able to understand everything surrounding the conversation there in order to be able to put your sentences together properly. And there are also things called subject markers and object markers and place markers and topic markers that we don't have in English. And getting my brain to just be familiar with and recognize, oh, that's a subject marker. So now what does that word mean? So now I know what the subject is. And putting it all together has been an excruciating process for me right now. But it goes to show you that if I tried to put my Korean sentences together using my English mindset, I'm never going to put together a proper um, Korean sentence that will make any sense to anybody, because it's a completely I'm approaching it from a completely different cultural aspect. And that, I think, is the critical part of why people don't understand about thinking, why they're having trouble. They think they're thinking in English when they're using their words and they're using their grammar, but we're missing the cultural aspect. And I think, and the other part of the cultural aspect, so I did put it as the separate and third part, is that you have to understand the history of the people and the development of, and how that history um, develop or was the cause of the way the people developed, and how they developed and why they developed in this particular manner. So um, So again, actually, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. I'm sorry for all these adjustments. It's been a long time since I've done these. It's been several months. Um, but we're friends, we're family. So anyway, um, and she's Lebanese, and I'm not used to Middle Eastern ways of life or, anything. So we've been having great discussions, and she's explaining a lot of, but you have to understand, Kathleen, this, that, or the other thing. And so that's why, you know, people speak their mind, or that's why this, that, or the other thing. That's why family is so important. That's why, you know, things work the way they do. That's why we think the way we do. And I've been filling her in on different cultural aspects of life in America and why we think this way and where certain words came about. We were talking about the term white trash the other day, and she never understood. She knew what it meant, but she never really gave it much thought. And so I explained to her, that it was during the famine in Ireland when everyone came over to the United States. Everyone was, starving and in poor health and poor condition. And there were so many people coming that there were particular jobs. Down south is the specific one I'm thinking of. They were having trouble with the swamps and, disease because of I think it was the mosquitoes or something, some massive problem that they needed to either drain the swamps or fill them in or something. And they didn't want to use the slaves because, again, this is my understanding of it. It might be different. So if you know a different version of it, please let me know. But the slaves were considered valuable in the sense that they were property. They had been paid for and they had a specific job. Sadly, as horrible as that is, that was the situation. And so they needed a large workforce of expendable people. And the Irish happened to be the ones at that moment. It was an opportunity that someone exploited. And so, the Irish were sent in to do these jobs, these horrible jobs, and thousands of people died because of the diseases. They weren't prepared for any of, um, the bugs and different things that they encountered. So their bodies weren't hadn't built up immunities. They were already starving, already vulnerable from a health standpoint. And so the Irish were sent to do that job because they were expendable. They were garbage. They were trash to be thrown away. Um, and you didn't have to pay them much. So it's a sad story. That's what happened. It is, a situation that's what happened. And so it's part of the history, and those mentalities still carry along. Every culture has their own version, of that kind of a story, and it's part of the development. And when you understand these stories, because my Lebanese friend was as flabbergasted, one of my students' favorite words, flabbergasted. She said, "Oh my goodness, I can't believe that. That's horrible." Yes, it's horrible. Um, but that's where the word came from. And she's explaining to me different things about her culture. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, it's fascinating. And oh my goodness, really, so everybody's got their versions of stuff. But because they're happening in different environments, different, natural geographical um, environments, and historical environments, and political environments, everything that happens within in a certain area has an effect on how the language develops, how people communicate with each other. Are they friendly? Are they, suspicious? Do they like to share? Do they not like to share? Are they open, or are they private? And so learning this is all part of being able to think in English. And so many people struggle because so many people don't have that cultural understanding. You haven't been trained, or even it hasn't been brought to your attention that that's all part of it too. So many people think, oh, I'm going to speak English and go to a country where, oh, you're an English speaking person. I'll be able to speak freely with you. But then without that cultural understanding, so a few things happen. So here's the part of the program where we talk about what happens when you don't think in English. So let me just recap quickly, because I love my language, and I love my culture, and I love learning about other languages and other cultures, because when you do, you open up your ability to communicate in a much deeper, richer, amazing capacity with more and more people. So let me just reiterate. So the three parts of what it means to think in English. Yes, you have to know the vocabulary and the grammar and all those rules that everybody hates. But think about your own language or other languages. Everybody's got rules that they have to follow. Everybody's got exceptions to rules. So it's no different. It's just we might have more. And there's a reason for that. And that's important to discover. So you need to find out about things. I've come. Let me do this, and then I'll finish that thought later. So you need your grammar and vocabulary. You have to understand not only the word itself and what it means, so cup, but there's all sorts of underlying words. And there are many in English, there are many words for cup. You have mug, you have tumbler, you have all these different things, and they mean something slightly different. With English, there's a lot of nuance. So just knowing the word cup will get you by. But if you want to progress, if you want to become an advanced speaker of English and eventually a fluent speaker of English, you have to know the nuances. Language. So you need grammar, and you need your vocabulary, and you need to understand the underlying words. Go deep. Go deep. I'll get to that part. So vocabulary and grammar, you need to know the etiquette and traditions of the people and of the different situations that you're going to be speaking in. And then you have to know the history and the development of the culture itself, and the language. So the people and the language, because the language develops along with the people, because the people are trying to communicate with each other, so they're always trying to get better at it. And there are reasons why certain things are said and certain things are done. And so those are the three components that you really need to focus on. So what happens when you don't learn to think in English? Um, so if you're not thinking in English, what's happening is, number one, your pronunciation suffers. And this one is key for the students I work with, my not just the younger students, but the adults as well. I had a corporate class a few months ago, and the one of the students, he was the head of their legal department. This is a global company, head of the legal department, and he was having trouble with the the differ the to he was having trouble differentiating between the ch sound and the sh sound. So between sh and ch, ch. So sh and ch. Really having a hard time with it. And he kept mixing everything up, and he would use them at the wrong time. And so one of his underlings, which luckily they were good friends, or it could have been difficult and hard for them. Um, she said, "Remember, it's like there's a declination, che, chi, chai, cho, chu." In Spanish, I don't know what it's for. I haven't gone that far with my Spanish, but che, chi, chai, cho, chu. And so she was helping him to connect it with his native tongue, which was great. But then, whenever he would go to say words with the ch sound, he would say it like if it was ch, well, whatever. If there was another vowel after it, he would say that part of it in Spanish and not in English. And so I had to help him to then, okay, separate the Spanish sounds from the English sounds. And so we worked on those, the differences between the Spanish sounds and the English sounds. And so once he could hear the differences, then I could say, okay, now, whenever you see this, you have to forget that you ever learned Spanish, and just forget anything you've ever known about Spanish and remember you're speaking English. What is the English sound? And it can take some time initially to work through all of that and train yourself to think. Like, I put my blinders on. That's what this is. I put my blinders on. So when I'm trying to learn Korean, I'm forgetting all about my English and I'm putting my brain into the whatever it is I know about Korean and the structure and everything. And I'm forgetting my English. And that's what I have to do. So just put that aside and just forget you ever learned it. Um, so so you're going to have trouble, is my point here, and it's going to add a lot of extra work for you, and probably a lot of frustration for you. So what you need to do then is, so what will happen also is that you're not going to be producing the correct sounds. You're going to be combining English sounds with the sounds of your language, which won't produce the right sounds in English, which could create confusing sounds. Like, you might be saying a sound that actually does mean something in English, but it's not what you want it to mean. And so by not thinking in English, you're throwing a whole level of confusion into your attempts at communicating in English. So know that this happens to just about anyone who's trying to learn any language. It's happening to me when I'm trying to learn Korean, and it happened to me when I was trying to learn German and French and Spanish. So it does take some effort in the beginning, but if you put that effort in, and if you remind yourself why you're doing this, so that you won't be struggling. You're working hard right now, but if you don't work hard right now getting it correct, then you're going to struggle in the future. So remind yourself that right now it's hard work and it might be tedious. And you might think, oh my goodness, why did I take this language? Just know that any kind of preparation that you do beforehand, all of that initial work, think of it when you're trying to organize your closet. If you do some initial thinking and planning and working, and make sure you fold your laundry and make sure you hang things up, you know it's a bit of effort, but not as much as if you just threw things on the floor and then had to try to figure things out. So think of it that way, if that helps you. So the problems when you don't, you throw in a whole level of confusion just because of the way you're putting things together, or the sounds that you're making could be used differently, or not any sounds that an English speaker would understand, so they don't know what you're saying. And you're adding that level of struggle for yourself. um, so so now let's talk about, because I know you know me, I can talk. And if you don't know me, you can probably tell I can talk. Like I said, I love this. So let's talk about some practical approaches that you can take to really get started right away in thinking in English. Now that you have a better understanding of what it means, that it's not just words and grammar. There's more to it. There's more to it. So the first thing that I would suggest to do is just change the way you think about learning. Um, Look at it differently. There's two ways that I always refer to. The first one is that, when you're learning a language, you're going on a safari. You're exploring a whole new world. Um, it's it's a people, a culture. Everything that you're doing right now is brand new. So you're going on safari, or think of it as, being one of the first pilgrims to come to America, to North America, and discovering the United States of America. None of this is familiar when the people from England came over here, when the explorers came over here and discovered it. None of this part of the world had ever been discovered. There were people living here, but nobody else in the world knew that. And I'm sure that the people living here had no idea that there was anything else. And so um, it's all brand new, and it was never seen before. So in your case, the English language is all brand new. You've never seen it, or you might have seen little bits of it, heard things, but now you're discovering it for yourself. So think of it as either a safari or an exploratory trip. You're going on expedition, and you're discovering everything that's new. So just reframe the way you think about learning. Don't think of it as just, oh, I got to study. I have to stick my head in the book and repeat things endlessly and hope I learn something. That's not what learning is all about. Learning is discovering. So try to put yourself in an explorer's mindset. Read up on some explorers and find out what they did, how they approached the project of exploring the Antarctic, or exploring a particular jungle, or, up and down the Amazon, whatever. Find out how they approached it, and then approach your language learning the same way, because it really is a journey of discovery. So that's one way that I like to look at it. The other way I like to look at it is as though it's an archaeological dig. You've come across this strange mound, and so you're starting to dig it out, and you're finding that somebody was there and somebody drew this picture, and what were they trying to say? And so you uncover layer after layer after layer of this new again new world, this new civilization to you. So you're uncovering things, you're going deeper. So not only are you pushing forward into a, a whole new wide world, but you're also digging beneath to discover all the underlayers of what made this world the way it is, and who are these people, and what do they think and like, and what are their tastes and things like that. So if you think of it that way, it then becomes an exciting endeavor, not just drudgery. It's not like you're the little hamster or gerbil spinning on the wheel, just going nowhere. You're actually going someplace. So um, that's the first thing, to change the way you look at learning and the whole process. And then when you begin speaking in English, I've gone over this. Just forget that you even know your native language. Just try to keep in mind that right now English is what I'm speaking. So in my mind, I try to say Korean is what I'm speaking. Korean is the only thing I know. I only know Korean. I only know Korean. So do that same thing, and it will help you to. It might still be a struggle at first, uh, just even to train your mind. But once you get used to doing it, it will make your life so much easier. Believe me. And then finally, use the cultural insights that you're learning. Um, Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I did miss something. I'll get to that. Well, it's kind of all the same. Um, no, I need to put it back here. So in the process of changing the way you're thinking about learning, this is an archaeological dig. It's an exploration. You have to ask questions. You're going to come up with new things. New things are going to present themselves to you all the time. So you need to be asking questions, like not questions beyond what is this? What does it mean? Well, does it mean anything else? Why does it mean that? How is it used? Is it only used in one way? Are there other ways to use it? Keep asking those questions. Those questions are what help you dig below the surface and really get to the heart of the matter. Ask questions about if you're told that you have to say the sentence a certain way. Well, you can say, is that the only way to say this? Are there other ways? Why do I have to say it that way? You know, what's the purpose of saying it that way? Could I say it this way? Always be asking questions, because those questions not only help you hack through the jungle or the forest or the whatever and clear the brush out of the way so you can move forward, but they also help you to dig deeper, to really get to know the underlying, the essence of the language and the people. Um, so that's all part of changing the way that you think about learning. And then when you're speaking English, you're going to forget that you ever know anything about your own native language or any other language. And then finally, you're going to use these cultural insights that you're learning about to communicate better, more thoroughly, more correctly or completely in your different situations. So, you're going to find out that you might be able to say to the little kid shooting baskets, on the playground, "Hey, what's your name?" or whatever that is. You're going to learn that you can't talk that same way to your boss all the time. In this day and age, the American business culture is more relaxed, but there are still rules of professionalism and things, and that would not be considered professional in most circumstances. So Notice I said most circumstances. So you have to know when it is okay, when it's not okay, um, all of those different things. And so you're going to use those insights. You're going to, as you learn more about the language, more about the words and how you use them, try using them. Put that new knowledge to practice right away as soon as you've got it. Don't hold on to it. Use it. Learn something new and put it into practice. And that's how you're going to be able to um, think in English much more easily and more completely. Again, so many people are missing that key aspect, those other two steps of it's not just the vocabulary and the grammar. You have to dig deeper. You have to know the culture. You have to know the etiquette and all the different aspects. And in order to know those, you really have to go deeper within those areas to find out, well, why? Because it makes a difference. Why? People keep saying to me, I've had friends in France say to me, well, why don't Americans ever stop to eat lunch? Why do they work through lunch? Or, you know, why do you drive such huge cars? They're not used to it. The streets in Europe are narrow. They weren't, everything is closer together. It's more compact. So they don't need the big cars. But in America, in the United States of America, everything is spread out. You have ranches that are thousands of acres. Well, you need a big car to haul, lumber and, you know, drag, pull trailers full of horses or cattle. You need the bigger cars for the power, and you need the bigger cars to get across this vast land. They need to be sturdy to go over any kind of terrain. There's mountains and hills and rocky places that we have to travel over. So, there are reasons for that. It's not, and so many people, I've seen many videos of people having comments about Americans being so strange or so rude or so this or so that. And, what don't you understand about Americans and this, that, and the other thing. And so many of the comments are just judgmental based on a comparison between their culture and the American culture. But there's doesn't seem that any of the people making the comments have actually thought about, but why are they that way? No one seems to ask that question. People look at Americans and think that we're rude, and in many, many cases we are, um, even to ourselves, even in our own culture. Um, but oftentimes it's just that we're used to just dealing directly. There's not a lot of, building a rapport or building a relationship beforehand. We'll get to that as the next step. We just do it in a different order. Um, so again, if you don't ask the questions, you're always going to misunderstand. And you're going to, in your mind, think that, well, my understanding is the right way. But you have to ask the questions or you'll never know. So, honestly, thinking in the language that you're trying to learn. So, in our case, thinking in English, it's going to take a little bit of work up front because now that you know about these other two steps, they're a little bit more work, and you're going to have to put some time into it. But again, the work that you put in up front is going to eliminate so much confusion on your end, confusion on the listener's end, and it's going to eliminate a ton of struggle for you. Again, remember, you're working hard right now. Think of it as, planting a garden. You've got to turn the soil over. You've got to pull out all the stuff that's going to get in the way of the plant growing. You have to fertilize the ground and mix it all in and plant all the seeds and all of this stuff. There's a lot of work in the beginning, But all you're going to have to do from then on is make sure it's watered, pull out the weeds, and watch it grow. And so you're doing the cultivating right now, the cultivating and the nurturing and this, that, and the other thing. Those beginning stages of preparing the soil so that you can then plant the seeds of the language, water it, nurture it, and watch it grow. Okay, so I hope that helped you. Um, and so if you have any questions, if this brings up any questions for you, put them in the chat. Um, and if you're watching the replay of this, put them in the comments. I will look through them and I will make sure to answer them for you. And if I think it's worth it to put it on a live, as a topic of a live, I will let you know in the comments. Okay. So I have to go because we have the teachers only one coming up in just a few minutes. So I'm really glad we did this today and I hope it was helpful for you. So let me know in the comments what you learned from this, and go beyond the questions. Ask me a question, yes, but tell me what you learned. Tell me something that was shocking to you or that surprised you that you just didn't know or never thought of, or maybe there's another tip that you can give us that will help us to think in English more easily. So, all right, I will go. I have to end now, but we'll see you next week, every Thursday at noon Eastern Standard Time. Don't forget to subscribe. All right, bye bye.